Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Developing the Leader Within. And today I have a special guest near and dear to my heart. I know him since 2008. He's a fellow brother from the Navy, a fellow chief, and I am so happy to have him. Terry Spain, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Enrique. I definitely appreciate it. So when I knew that you had the podcast, I knew I had to definitely jump on because I definitely you're somebody I definitely admire.
Oh, thank you so much for that. And folks, today we're going to be talking about diversity and inclusion, something near and dear to my heart, and something that I have always championed throughout the time that I've been serving as a leader. But Terry, we're going to get into a topic that's really down your alley, right? Terry,
Oh yeah.
Terry is a speaker, an author, and a master at diversity and inclusion. So, we're talking about topics like this. It can go so many different ways and different flavors. But if I was a leader at an organization, I was heading a group or a team, how do I get started in being proficient, being good at diversity and inclusion?
Well, Enrique, that's an excellent question, and it's simply one thing. It starts with you. Oftentimes, we would get leaders that figure that they only needed to take one class and in diversity and inclusion, and then they're set. But diversity and inclusion is forever evolving. So I challenge folks, in particular leaders, to take the leadership or diversity and inclusion class on a quarterly basis so that you can actually know a lot of the new things that are going on. One of the things that I teach is socialization. A lot of folks have to realize that it starts from you. So when it starts from you in your socialization process, it starts from you as a kid, growing up. Some of the things that you may have been accustomed to doing as a kid that's no longer acceptable, and you wouldn't have the idea or wouldn't know anything about it if you didn't get more proficient in diversity and inclusion, which is one of the reasons why I like boot camp. You and I both had one similarity. We went to boot camp, and one of the things with boot camp is that everyone is on one page. They strip you down to be the same person as the person that's standing next to you, and doesn't matter what color you are, doesn't matter what race, ethnicity, religion. Everyone's there for one common goal, and that's one of the unique things. And that's what, when it starts with you as a leader, and it starts with you as the head of a company or head of a department, it all starts with you. Because to be honest with you, I've seen aspects and times where leaders get caught up in things that they necessarily didn't want to get caught up in because they didn't have the proper training. So leadership starting with you is the most important thing that I can definitely say as it relates to learning about diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, I'm definitely a proponent for things starting with you. I've often said that leadership starts with you at your house, right? So, that's where you spend most of your day. That's where you lie down to sleep. That's where you get up to go to work. Uh, and if leadership is not there for you, then, how could you do it somewhere else? So I totally agree. And I love the example of boot camp because they truly do strip you down to bare metal so that they
Right.
can bring up out of you something that they want to see from that day on forward. And so it starts with us. We're getting the classes, we're getting educated, but there's this little thing called groups, and you go back to the office, right? And you go, and
Yeah.
so what could you tell us about after we got it all, internally, and we have it? What can you tell us about the groups, the environments we go to?
Okay. And you're talking more about the inclusive groups, correct?
Right, right.
All right. So one of the scenarios that I definitely like to use, but first, no one wants to come to a job and they feel like they're absolutely miserable. And no one wants to come to a job and they feel like they're not being included in the process. So one of the things that I use when I speak is I paint a picture for them and I say, just imagine if I invited you over to my house for dinner and everyone sitting around the table has utensils. Everyone sitting around the table has a plate except for you. How would you feel? And some would say, well, I would feel upset because I don't have anything to eat with. So I said, just imagine if that's the person that's working for you and they come to work every day and they're getting those utensils. They're not getting that they're not getting that fork to eat off of. So they improvise. They do different things. They either go out to another job. They either borrow from another coworker. So those are some of the things that you have to think about when you're talking about the groups and you're talking about diversity and inclusion. I definitely feel that that concept about me sitting around the table and making sure everyone has all the correct utensils and everyone has everything they need to eat. That's what makes a good organization. That's what makes your team grows. That's what makes your team work together. So I'm definitely a fan of that and including that inclusive environment.
And I love that because you you have to have a mind that takes into account someone else for inclusion to be something,
Correct.
right?
Hmm.
And so you build this inclusive environment. You're feeling that that's how you are. You're in an environment, and not every leader really gets to understand full well what diversity and inclusion is. And sometimes I think it's because they're missing certain ingredients that actually in the mind it makes it clear for you. um, what would you say is one thing or several things that leaders need in order to get to that point where they understand diversity and inclusion?
One of the key things is an open mind. Um, I think oftentimes when folks get to the pinnacle of their career or get to the top of the chart for their jobs, they don't have an open mind. They don't have that compassion. One of the things I do want to share with you, and I was at a conference that I was speaking at, and one of the gentlemen, after I gave this scenario, he almost broke down and cried. He said, the scenario goes like this. I asked, how many people here who have cell phones? So everyone raised their hand. And I said, how many people know how many apps are on their cell phone? And so everyone was looking around, because they don't know how many apps they have in their cell phone. And so I told them one thing that happened to me. I have my go-to apps that I use all the time. And I know I'm quite sure you may have your go-to apps that you go to. And some of the apps that I don't use on a daily basis or never use, I would either put those in the background or just delete. So one particular time, I had an app that didn't see a use for it, and so I deleted it. And once I deleted that app, I went to one of my go-to apps that I used to use a lot, and it didn't work anymore. So I'm fiddling around with my phone trying to figure out why my go-to app doesn't work anymore. So finally, I had to go to the store, to the cellular store, and they said, "Well, did you delete this other app?" And I said, "Yeah, I wasn't using it, so I don't think I need to have it anymore." They said, "Well, that app that you deleted works hand in hand with the app that you use on a daily basis." So as I was driving back home, I was like, "Wow, just imagine if that was like people." And people, they have a go-to app. So you have leaders that have their go-to people, and they forget about the people that is behind them and that's in the back that doesn't get a lot of the attention. When those people leave, what happens to those other folks that you usually go to? And that's one of the things as leaders that you have to recognize. It's one of the things that you have to see in your organizations, that you may have those apps that you just throw on the back burner. That's actually the thriving force for your organization.
That is such a powerful analogy. Um, you know, we often as leaders don't really get to know everybody.
Hmm.
We just see what's being done, right? We're happy with that, you know, the screwdriver is turning the screw, and that one's going down and making everything work. And all we care about at times is it working? Yeah, okay,
Right.
good. So let's go. And unfortunately, you're right. There are leaders, but some leaders are because other people are making them shine, right? And
Right.
and if you and just like you just said in your story, if you don't know your people, uh, in a way where you can say, man, if I get rid of this other thing ain't gonna work.
Correct.
Uh, you'll consider them a whole lot more, and that's such a powerful visual and story. Um, so I got the training. I'm ready to go. My environment is primed for a great diversity and inclusion scenario. And now I'm learning my people. I'm making sure that everything's working right, that people are not, that I'm not unplugging the power over here and everything's going dead over there.
Yeah.
um how do I get my team on board?
Mm. That's the $1 million question, but there are definitely a lot of scenarios. One of the things I'm huge in team building. I think I get excited. Anybody that could tell you that work for me, work with me, they'll definitely tell you that I'm a team person. And one of the things that I did for our team, which was really small as it may seem, but it was powerful for the organization. We had a few people that were trying to lose weight, and so I proposed to do a smoothie diet. And so we had about 20 people on board that said, yeah, I would love to do this. Let's do the smoothie diet. Now, you wouldn't think that something so small as a smoothie diet for 10 days would be powerful for an organization. But I have to be honest with you. Everyone that participated in that smoothie diet lost weight and became healthier. So that rubbed off. So what happened was other departments tried to mimic the same thing that we did, because they saw the team building and how it actually made the our working environment a lot better as well. So something as small as a smoothie diet definitely helped out our organization. So team building is definitely one of my biggest one of my biggest things that I usually like to tell people as it relates to making sure that the organization runs smooth. So that's one of the big advocates that I am for.
Yeah, and I can definitely vouch for the team concept working, because and it's great that when you're successful at one team building, and it actually shows that other people would try to imitate and actually try to replicate those results, because that's kind of like the 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 first way of saying, man, you're worthy of following, and that's
Yes.
so great. Um, Being in the Navy, I know that um, we travel a lot. We go to
Mhm.
places. We do things that are international. We don't stay in the local, state,
Right.
nation. I mean, we are all over the place. Um, we mentioned boot camp earlier on. The the people that comprise the units and the divisions and the companies are not all from the same place. I
Hmm.
remember I remember vividly being in boot camp day one, and someone told me, "You are the very first Puerto Rican I have ever met."
Wow.
And that blew my
Wow.
mind, because I was raised in New York. There's
Oh yeah.
nothing but all kinds of people
Yeah, you're right.
everywhere. So, what can you tell us about exposure, right? Exposure,
Hmm.
um, getting in an environment where it actually facilitates getting smart on diversity and inclusion.
Okay, I have two things. I don't. In 2008, I don't know if you remember this or not. I was a part of a multicultural committee that we had in Gulfport,
Mhm.
and we did a diversity fair, and that was one of the biggest. I know it was the first time they've ever had one, but that was one of the biggest um, events that we had on the base, and it did wonders because oftentimes people just when you think about different ethnicity, they usually think about their food. They don't understand the actual culture, the language, and the suffers that some of these ethnicities had to go through in order to make it. And so that to me did wonders for the base, and it did wonders because I still talk about that. And some of the folks who I that were there, that's one of the first things that they mentioned is that. But you mentioned something also about traveling, and that's one of the things that that's in my book. I put in there that traveling equals a better me, and I talk about how traveling to Africa and living in a courtesy of the Navy, I had a unique opportunity to go to West Africa and travel to several countries there, and just understanding the perspective of how people live, what they had to go through, definitely changed me. I It did a number for me. So when I actually got a chance to come back to the United States, I was more compassionate. I was more understanding. But most importantly, I became a better leader as I traveled back from Africa because it put a lot of things in perspective for me. So traveling does equal a better you. I also had an opportunity to listen to some of these prominent speakers that we have. And one of the things that they're a component and I mean an advocate for is travel, because once you travel, you get an opportunity to see different things. And so I'm definitely an advocate for traveling because it helps you out a lot.
Well, I definitely remember that event at Gulfport, and
Yeah.
I was part of it. I was happy to be part of it. You know, you brought groups
Yes.
that were in, to the indigenous part of what their roots came, and it made an impact. When you have folks that come in and dance the traditional dances,
Yes.
and and the food, right? The food of different countries, and you get to taste and see how much you've been missing out, right, on a fast food diet. But that exposure is eye opening, and if the Navy did anything for you and I was that it actually opened our minds. It opened the apertures of what we could see, our eyes, uh, for the sake of, hey, uh, it's nice that you grow up in a town, and it's nice that you know everybody in that town. Uh,
Right.
but for and I was in boot camp 1989, at the end of 1989, so it was a little bit ways back. Um, but to have somebody say you're the first Puerto Rican, it just blew my mind, because, like I said, I grew up in New York. I was exposed to all kinds from all walks. I mean, and you get that exposure. You mentioned traveling in your book, which we're going to
Right.
talk about here in a second, and that it makes a better you. I think it's just that it opens you up. Yeah, it opens your heart.
Hmm.
You pull into Kowloon Bay in Hong Kong, right? And your ship is out in the water, and you're anchored out. And you take these little ferry boats, which we don't take in the States, right?
Yes. Yes.
you
You're right.
you start to appreciate travel and modes of travel. You go in, and then you do a com rail at an
Hmm.
orphanage.
Yes.
Yeah, you painting, but guess what? You talking to these kids, you see their environment, and then you start to appreciate how you was raised and how you grew
Correct.
up, and all these things add to us. So I just talked about your book. You wrote a book. I'm
Hmm.
so proud of you, brother, for
I
doing
appreciate
that.
that.
And so talk to us a little bit about the book.
All right. So the book is Just Lead. Um, it's a small book, but I tell people it packs a powerful punch. And it pretty much just gives different scenarios of my military career and my upbringing one of the things that I wanted to say, I'm originally from Conway, South Carolina, but I'm also a military dependent, a military child as well back then. And I grew up in Italy, and that's one of the unique things that a lot of people don't know about me. And so I didn't know growing up in Italy actually would prepare me to become a better leader. When you talk about diversity and inclusion, and you're talking about cultures and cultural competency, those are the things that molded me and helped me out. So, but this book pretty much just comprised some of the lessons learned that I've had being a leader and some of the leadership that I was under. And it gives you tips and it helps motivate you and it keeps you encouraged, in particularly in a time such as these, as you can challenge yourself. I have an opportunity there's opportunities in the book where you can actually write down different things because I ask you challenging questions. So like I said, it's a small book, but it's a good read. It's an easy read. It's an exciting read, and I can't wait for you to read it.
Oh, definitely. I'm getting that thing today. So so listen, if someone was interested in learning more about diversity and inclusion, they they want to hone up their skills, how would they get a hold of you?
Well, there's a couple ways, but the first way is you can actually go to my website, which is Terry, Terry Spain Consulting.com. So that's so it's actually terryspainconsulting.com. And another way is I'm actually on social media platforms. You can actually go to on Facebook. You can find me on Terry Spain Consulting, and then I'm also on Instagram as well. And from those three different sites, you can actually have my phone number, and we can definitely do a consultation. Or just if you needed me for like any speaking engagements, I'm definitely available for that as well.
All right, folks. So you heard it. We'll have that information at the bottom of the video, also on the podcast. But Terry, thank you so much for being with us today.
I
This
appreciate
is
it.
a topic that you literally can go on and on about and
Yes,
learn so much about. But thank you for leading us through, how it started with you all the way out to actually, traveling the world and getting
mhm,
that type of exposure that we need. And I think that every leader should have as they're growing up as a leader. So thank you so much for being on our show.
my
And for
pleasure.
all those that are listening, as we normally end our show, success to you.